Can you hear me now? Let's see. Can you hear me? Oh, yay. Looks like yes. Okay. All right. Now I'm getting responses that everybody can hear me. So hopefully everybody can hear me. Thank you all so much for, yay, for sending those, the messages that you can hear me. So I just want to kind of go off and once we get this poll finished, then what we'll do is I'm going to go through some of the information that I talked about. It was just basic housekeeping information. So if you haven't already finished the poll, please complete the poll. So while we're doing that, just want to kind of go through. Most of you guys saw the slides. Basically, we're doing today is making sure that you participate by participating in the polls as well as the survey at the end. That those are both required and also to attend in the entire time that we are in the webinar in order to get your certificate. That's what's required by the state. So I appreciate all you joining me today and taking this hour of your time to spend with us, and hopefully you'll get some ideas for your center. So I'm going to close the poll and I'm going to share the results. Oh yeah, awesome. It looks like a lot of you do. About 44% of you do gardening at your center. About 56% of you do not. So hopefully today, I think you'll get some ideas that maybe will give you some opportunities to try some gardenings in your center. So I'm going to ask another poll. And what is your biggest obstacle to gardening? Is it time, adequate outdoor space, cost, lack of understanding of gardening basics? You have a couple more seconds so we can get those final people to vote. So it really is important in order for us to get licensing hours. I do need to make sure you all participate in the polls. And so that's just helps them to understand that it's an interactive certificate, interactive education. So I'll give another 5 seconds so we can get those last voters in. All right. We're going to kind of go on. So it looks like for most of you, it's adequate outdoor space and time are the biggest obstacles, as well as a little bit of lack of understanding. So hopefully we'll address some of those things today, because I think those are, for a lot of us, those main kind of obstacles for incorporating gardening kind of techniques and ideas into your center. So hopefully, I'm hoping by today you get some ideas, and that will help you add some of this gardening concepts into your centers. So I think one thing we want to do is really build our knowledge around, or help kids understand about gardening. So, reading books, going on nature walks, doing seed exploration. And seed exploration is one of the best things we can do with little ones to help them get a better understanding of kind of where our food supply comes from, how things grow. Also, help them identify, have the kids help, identify what types of garden might work in our center or our home. These are the things that might, and why. And helping them understand the limitations of space, helping them understand the time it takes in order for us to have a garden. And then also help them understand that gardening takes time, not just in the process of setting up the garden, but also it takes time for those plants to grow. And so that's a really, the forward thinking, that kind of planning out ahead of time is a higher level thinking that we want to really help start to instill in our little ones. So thinking about where we can grow a garden. And I think for so many of us, we think just outdoor gardening. So we're going to talk a lot today about what we call container gardening, but uh, because that seems to be what is most feasible for most centers that we are working with. And so we do know that there's three types of gardening. One is kind of indoor gardening, container or outdoor gardening, which is what most people think about as gardening, and then the container gardening. So we do know our outdoor gardening needs a larger amount of space. It's also very dependent on the weather, also dependent on kind of where you're located, water runoff, water availability, uh, pets, animals, so we want to make sure it's protected away from deer and raccoon and squirrels and rabbits and things like that. So for a lot of us, if we have enough outdoor space, it may not be the best choice for outdoor space. Maybe we have water runoff, maybe we're on a hill, maybe we don't have a lot of flat ground that makes it easy. And so what we'll talk a lot of today about is container gardening and really simple ideas that you can help bring the concept, the educational thought process behind gardening for your little ones in small spaces and really easy, not super time consuming. So indoor gardening is great. It's a wonderful place to start, especially if you're not someone who's really familiar with gardening. It's not affected by weather, so we can start it. We don't have to only start it in those warmer months. We can do it all year round if we want to. It lasts longer than that traditional growing season, so we can keep things, and this is really great for some of like our indoor plants. Some people like trees. Fruit trees grow really well inside. We can have miniature fruit trees. They'll grow as big as your container, and so some people like to move those in and out of the house, in and out of the center. We do want to make sure that if you do any kind of indoor gardening, that we do have direct sunlight as much as possible. However, if you are a place that doesn't have a lot of direct sunlight, that is okay, because there are various things that you can grow that are more okay with shade. And so if you don't have a lot of sun, we don't want that to be the obstacle. We just want to find different grass is really good for that. There's a lot of shade grasses, but there's also some vegetables that grow better in shade than they do in the sun. If you do have something that needs sun, we do know our south or southwest sun exposure tends to be the best. So if you are thinking about, where you want to place a little indoor gardening in your current location, I would really try to go for more of a south or southwest window. So our outdoor gardening, kind of we talked about, we need to make sure we have lots of direct sunlight, although there are a few things that can grow well in the shade. But that water drainage is really important. We don't want any kind of water runoff, but also the access to water. So how far does your hose go? How do we get water to our plants? And then once again, pesticides, possible exposure, as well as those plants. Like where I live, we have raccoons and badgers and deer and everything kind of all over, and so I have to make sure that my garden is elevated and that it's protected by fencing. So we do want to just kind of think about where you're located and what kind of animals and things could possibly be exposed. So our container gardening is a great way to start. I think you want to kind of think about how you're going to pack your container. And so we want to make sure that anytime you do use a container, you want to have holes at the bottom. So I'll buy containers and they won't have holes at the bottom. And what happens then is you get a lot more root rot and poor drainage. And so you want to make sure that if you get a container that you have a hole in the bottom, or a way that you can put a hole in the bottom so that we get that water drainage. Also, because some of our pots can be really heavy, what we want to do is kind of a filler at the bottom. One thing this does is it makes the pot so it's full without that weight, because dirt is going to weigh a lot, and especially if you're having to move a container at different places, you don't want it to be extremely heavy. Plus, with a container, oftentimes, especially if you have a larger container, the roots aren't going to be as much of a concern growing down. So you can just put different types of of filler. What I'll do is I'll just do recyclable stuff. I will put bottles, old water bottles, soda bottles, ketchup bottles, whatever, in my larger containers. Or you can do plastic peanuts and things like that. I do find that I like something that's a little bit bigger, like the water bottles or the pop bottles and things like that, the pop cans, because they just take up a lot more room. And then I'll just pour my dirt kind of around that. And so it will it'll take up a lot of space, but it won't weigh as much. And then you want to have soil, and because this soil in a container is not going to have exposure to possibly worms, unless you add those worms, to the animals that kind of are going through that may lay feces, which is a fertilizer, but not a fertilizer that we want to use for our foods, especially with kiddos. So we do want to get a potting soil, because that potting soil is going to have that nutrients. If you just use regular soil, I would use a kind of a supplement, a vitamin supplement, just to make sure that you're getting some rich nourishment in your soil. And then the nice thing is we just want to make sure we keep it clean around the top, but that will help with overflow of water and things like that. So this is just kind of how you want to layer your pot, and really that making sure that it's not too heavy so that you can't move it. Other ideas for container gardening, we do the tub idea. It works great, especially in the center. It's super easy, it's super portable. But if we're not putting kind of like the bottom kind of filler, it can get quite heavy. And so you make sure that you're putting something like a little filler in there, at least a third of the way up. And then if you see on this, we punched a bunch of holes in the bottom, and that's for that drainage. So you want to make sure that if what you're using doesn't already have holes for drainage, that you can add that. And the nice thing about a container garden like this is you put the lid down, and the lid is what's going to kind of protect your porch or whatever from the water and the drainage. So that's kind of a nice little, it's kind of your holder for your container. Other ideas are like burlap sacks work really well, especially for potatoes. We'll put potatoes in the burlap sack, and that works great. Ceramic pots are nice because those ceramic pots are going to breathe, and the water can easily escape. Hollowed out citrus fruit, we'll talk about that. Just a bag of potting soil, if you're really trying to simplify things, putting in a bag of potting soil and just opening that bag up, and then putting your plants or your seeds in there. Wooden barrels, we just want to make sure it's never treated wood, because the treated wood has chemicals which we don't want to expose the kiddos to. So a wooden barrel that's not a pressure treated wood. And then things like an old plastic wading pool. If you have plastic wading pools, I know with COVID, they were saying that those little plastic pools were kind of a commodity, and so they're hard to find. But the nice thing that those are nice too, if you want to cut some holes in the bottom of it. It's great because you can have multiple kiddos kind of working around that, and then that's really easy to contain. If you decide to do that outside, you can make that as an outside garden. Just put a little fence around it to protect it from animals. That makes a really easy gardening kind of container. We want to make sure that we aren't using, especially with kiddos, even if you're not growing food, we don't want kids kind of touching pressure treated wood, used tires, or old railroad ties, because of the chemicals that are in all those. So although you may have that for your own use, your own home, we don't want to use those with kids at all. If you're at your own house, you just don't want to use them for anything that is growing food or anything that's edible that you would be eating. This is a really fun idea. Kids love this, and it's super simple, and it kind of helps, just a basic gardening tips idea. So what you do is you put a cup and you put their picture on it, and then you can have them grow their hair. And so you can have them draw their picture, draw themselves. You can have, take a picture, lots of different kinds of ways to do this. But You just put then your grass or whatever your plant is that you want to grow, and then let the kids kind of watch as their hair grows. So that's a really easy way. Once again, if you're doing this, you want to make sure that you have a south or southwest exposure. That's going to get your best kind of growth. But if you are a place that doesn't have a lot of sun, maybe not a lot of windows, there are grass seeds that are shade, meant for shade, and those work really well in this too. We're going to talk a little bit about grass. So sometimes with gardening, we're just trying to teach that concept rather than probably you're not, for most of us, it's not going to be a sustainable garden. Um, is that ideal? Absolutely. Would it be wonderful for all of us to have a sustainable garden? That's where we're getting our fresh fruits and vegetables. Absolutely. Is it realistic for the majority of us? Absolutely not. And so what we want to do is trying to help kids understand how to care for plants, how those grow, what seeds are, what plants need, that responsibility that they take on when they're growing something. Being able to have, teaching them what the seeds look like and how to plant the seeds and why they need soil and why they need water and why they need sunlight, is really, those are important concepts for children to understand. So we talked about, the grass seed. The nice thing about grass seed is it's super inexpensive, grows really fast. And so that's kind of something that if you're kind of novice to this and you want to just have some, just dabble in it a little bit, I think grass works really well. If you're someone who wants to try, kind of growing some different kind of plants, this concept works really awesome too, because kids really get involved. It's really fun for them to see their hair growing. So that's kind of something to think about. It's a great little Mother's Day gift, Father's Day gift. And this is another idea, is just using like a glass jar. So the thing that we want to think about with glass jars are, we can't cut holes into the bottom for drainage. And so if you look, these all have like rocks or beads that are at the bottom. And so what that's doing is holding up the soil, but also allowing the water to drain down so that we can see how much water is in there. So we don't get root rot. We don't, the roots aren't just sitting in the water, and that would get that root rot. And so this is a really easy way, adding the different colors of rocks, helping the kids understand like why those rocks are there for the drainage, and that once they see the water, that we don't want to have a bunch of sitting water, because that's not good for the roots to have that water just sitting in that water, that they need water and moisture, but not an excessive amount. So this is a really easy way to have a little garden. They can also, the beauty of this one is they can see the roots. And if you see the one on the chives on the left, you can kind of see those roots growing. And so that's pretty cool for kids too, to understand the roots and how the roots grow to get the moisture and the nutrition from the soil. Once again, herbs, we talked a little bit about this last week, but herbs are absolutely fabulous. If you're someone who is new to gardening, I would definitely start with herbs. Herbs are great because they're very aromatic, and they are really quick and easy. But they also, the smell really kind of entices kids. But then you can easily transition that into your cooking. So let's say you do something like oregano. Well, then you could put oregano in several different dishes and help the kids maybe, harvest the oregano, help, kind of tear it up or get it into little pieces so that they can put it in the foods that they're eating, so that they can understand that what they're growing are foods and how that makes the food taste better. So something like mint, you could put mint in your water, and have them kind of taste the difference of what that mint tastes like when it's in cold water and been sitting in the water. Or basil, if you have, an Italian dish and you want to put some fresh basil. So the great thing about herbs is they're really easy, they're fast, they don't take up a ton of room. They're very aromatic and kids just love the smell. And so that's one of the places that I always tell people to start, is doing herbs. It's really a fun way to introduce gardening. as well as how that gardening affects our food supply. This is a really simple idea. And these are old like milk cartons. So once again, you kind of cut off the top, you cut holes at the bottom so that we have that drainage. But these are something that, the kids can plant, and then they can bring them home to their families, and they can replant them if they want to. Just cut away the outside and just plant the whole piece of dirt soil directly into the ground. Great gift ideas if you're looking for quick, low cost gift ideas. This is really great gift ideas for the kids to give their families. And the nice thing is you can just plant it and then recycle the rest of the container. This is another idea, using the pop bottles, and then the drainage is using the top for that drainage. So another top for that drainage. So these are kind of at an angle so that they drain out. But this is another way of inexpensive way. And once again, they can cut them away and they can replant those into the ground. Like someone had a question, sorry. If someone had a question, I see someone's hand is raised, but I don't see the question that they have. So if you had a question, please let me know and I can answer that question when we stop next. Seed bags are really fun. I love doing these too. So this is, once again, very small amount of space. Great for a south or southwest exposure, window exposure. And there's lots of different ways that we can make seed bags. The thing that's important is you want to be able to keep that moisture in. Some people add a cotton ball. Some people, I usually just add a wet, kind of damp paper towel. And then you can just put some seeds in there. I like to, when I'm doing these seed bags, I always soak my seeds or my seeds, or I'll use beans a lot overnight, because what's going to happen is that's going to help start the germination process and the sprouting process. So once they are in the bag, they sprout a little faster, and kids, they like that quick, being able to see that quick sprouting. So if you're going to do something like that, I always soak the beans or the seeds about 12 to 24 hours to help with that process, speeds up the process. You don't have to, but it does really help speed up the process. So what you do is you put a plastic baggie, just get staples, a paper towel, the seeds, and that sun exposure. If you want to just put dirt in there, I generally don't put the dirt in there, but if you want to, you can. The nice thing is when you do put the dirt in there, those are another things that they can take home and plant at their own home. Oftentimes, I'll just put a paper towel in there, and then it will just give enough moisture. So what it does is it kind of makes its own little greenhouse. So the moisture will stay in the baggie, making a little greenhouse, and also keep that warmth so that it grows fairly fast. So it's like a little greenhouse concept. And so the beauty of a greenhouse is it just keeps that moisture within. So you don't have to add as much moisture. If you see it drying out though, you want to add some drops of water because it's the moisture that really does help keep that growing. So this is another way, this is little popsicle sticks. And then the beauty of this one is with the dirt, you can see how the roots are growing. And I think that helping the kids understand going from, germination, having the seed, and then watching the seed grow is so fascinating for a little one. And I love the visual here because that plastic bag, they can see right through, they can see how it's growing up, but also it helps to understand that concept of what's growing up, but then the roots are going down to help anchor it into the ground so it doesn't just fall over. It also, that roots are helping, that's where it's getting the nutrition, the food and the vitamins and the minerals and the water. And so it really they can see that visual. So I really do love these. That's why I like the glass also, because they do make it really easy for that visual. Understanding the roots is really important for kids. And so I think, even as other things that you can kind of teach them is you know, how the roots help, like if you live on a hill, those roots help in stabilizing the dirt. So roots are so important, and so that kind of helps them see that roots concept. This is another really kind of cute idea, not as simple. If you have space outside and you're handy, you can make like a little teepee with different plants that you grow on that. So this is kind of like a fort. So this is an example. So it's like a little fort, having the things, you know, the plants grow around it is kind of fun. And so this one has some tomato plants growing around it too. So the tomatoes are kind of growing all over. And so that's kind of a cool concept too. So just a little bit more intensive, and you have to have the space. Gardening the glove I like. You want to use, if you do this, you want to use real cotton, not synthetic. Synthetic are just polyester plastics. So if you're going to do this, you want to use real cotton balls. And those are just a little bit more expensive, but it's something that works, especially if you're going to, and I should say, if you're going to use this to transplant into an outdoor area. If you're just helping them understand the concept, you can use a regular cotton ball. But if you're trying to help them understand and watch that grow outside and have them replant it, I would always use a real cotton ball. But this garden in the glove I think is fun because you want to just use a latex-free glove. And then I like different seeds. You don't have to, but I like the different seeds because it helps them to see how different things are growing and how long it takes different things to grow. Also with this, I generally soak my seeds overnight because it just makes it so much easier. They grow so much faster, and then it keeps the kids' attention. So what you want to do is help the kids kind of sort out the different seeds. So this can be really fun, is you know, especially if you are letting them kind of sit overnight with some water, helping the kids and not telling them at first what kind of seed they think it is. So kind of, you know, say, what kind of seed do you think this is? What do you think this is going to grow up to be? Because you can't tell at all from the seed what it's going to grow up to be. And so it kind of helps them understand that things change and transformation. It also kind of, you can use that from kind of that size and science perspective of largest to smallest or smallest to largest, different shapes, different sizes, different textures. And then you want to kind of label each finger of what is the seed that's going in there. So put those labels on. And then you wet the cotton ball and you squeeze out the extra. You don't want it to be sopping wet, but you definitely want that moisture in there because once again, we're kind of creating a greenhouse effect. And then you place the cotton ball in there and then the seed with the cotton ball down each finger. And then you can kind of poke it down there so it stays at the bottom. You know, poke it down with the pencil. And then what you'll do is once they're all in there, you can kind of wrap it up so that it stays enclosed, so that it has the moisture, that kind of greenhouse effect stays in there. And then you can hang those up like you would the seed bags in most preferably a south or southwest exposure window. And then you can watch them grow and you can have them predict which seed do they think is going to grow the fastest, which seed is going to grow the tallest, which seed will take longer to grow. And so you can kind of start getting those science prediction concepts when we're growing. So I think gardening is really awesome for that kind of math and prediction ideas. This is a little mini greenhouse. And so it's just a pop bottle, you know, plastic pop bottle that you just kind of cut. And then you put that over your plant, your little pot. And that kind of has that little mini greenhouse. So with this concept, what I would do is have the mini greenhouse and one without the mini greenhouse. And then you can help them kind of predict which one's going to grow faster. Why would it take longer for one to grow? So, you know, we want to grow the same thing in each. So if we're going to grow parsley, we want to grow the parsley in both. And have one with the little mini greenhouse and one without, and then help them understand why one in the greenhouse is going to grow a little faster, right? And that's because it's going to stay warmer It's going to help that that heat, as long as it does not boiling, it's going to help grow. And so kind of helping them recognize that benefit of the greenhouse effect. This is a really easy one. If you're going to do this, I would make sure it's an all cotton shoe organizer. You know, you want to make sure it just seems to drain a little bit better. I would do this definitely outside, because it will drain. It will, you know, get moisture. If you use plastic, the only thing about plastic is the nice thing is it doesn't. It's not going to leak as much, but at the same point, you're more likely to have kind of that root rot that happens. But if you want to try that, you can see which one you like better. But I like this for a classroom because each child can have their own little shoe organizer. So I would write their names on that, and then they can watch as their plant grows. So it doesn't take up a lot of room. It's really simple and easy. It is something that I would have outside because it is of the dirt. But if you decide to have it inside, make sure it's in a place that has some drainage that you can, you know, maybe put a towel underneath of it, and also recognize that it may get kind of dirty with the dirt. So grass is really awesome, quick and easy, simple and inexpensive. So this is something, sponge is you just get new sponges, which are, you know, really inexpensive. You can get some cheap sponges, and then you put them on a little plate. You need grass seed, water, and some clear plastic wrap. Although this one, if you look, it's got like a cake container, a cake protector, and that's once again that little greenhouse effect. So what we're going to do if you don't have a little cake container like this is you want to put the plastic wrap. The plastic wrap you're going to go over that as your kind of greenhouse effect. So what you want to do is soak this sponge in water and then wring it out until it's a little damp. And then you want to place it on the plate. And then you want to have the kids sprinkle it with grass seed. Then you have water, sprinkle water on there, keeping, you know, the moisture is going to stay in the sponge, and that's why you want to use newer sponges because they're going to keep the moisture better. And then you want to cover it loosely with your plastic wrap and then set in a nice kind of sunny spot. And then as needed, you want to keep that moisture with a little bit of water. And then in about 2 weeks, maybe less, you should have the world's smallest little lawn. And they can kind of grow that. So this works really well. Like I think this is a cute concept with the house, so that you can kind of have those architecture ideas, those building concepts, and then also the kind of the growing science concepts. So that's an easy, fun way. The other way is those heads, putting the grass in those little cups with their pictures on it, or they can draw their own picture. That's a really fun thing to do too. If you're like trying to work on names, how to spell their name, numbers, the great thing about grass is it's really easy to get to use because it's so inexpensive. It grows so fast, and also it grows pretty densely, and so it's really great for like numbers, names, those types of things. So that's another kind of idea. If you're going to have pots, then it's lining them with a coffee filter works really well because it allows the water to drain, but you don't lose a lot of your dirt. So the dirt stays contained. So if you're going to have coffee on little pots, especially inside, I would definitely put little coffee filters in there. That works really well. If you're having something that isn't edible and outside, like these little planters, you can put a diaper in there. The diaper helps keep the moisture in there, but remember, we don't want anything that is edible, but it really does help keep that moisture inside, so you don't have to water it as often. So that's kind of nice, especially if you have a lot of sun exposure, that it will keep it a little bit more moist. But once again, it's not going to be miracles, but it's just it does help keep it a little bit longer. This is that kind of container gardening, which I think really works well. I love it's portable, but you want to just make sure that you put something on the bottom so it's not so heavy, You put the little lid on underneath of it, and that works so that it doesn't get, it protects your deck. I would definitely put the coffee filters at the bottom. So you poke your holes and then you put coffee filters over those, kind of laying them flat. That way you're not losing a bunch of your dirt. Every time you water it, the dirt's not coming out. This is really nice too, a little seedling. So using citrus fruits. And so you want to try to cut out as much of the fruit as possible. And then try to, and you have to drain a little hole, dig a little hole at the bottom. So hollowed fruit, whether it's an orange or lemons or limes, either one of them work really well. Any of them work really, grapefruit works great because it's a little bit bigger. So you want to just make sure you take as much fruit out, try to get enough so that you have room for the dirt to be put in there and the seed to grow. You want to cut a hole in the bottom so it drains. If you don't cut a hole, you'll get root rot. Place once again in your south or southwest window. And the nice thing is these are really easy if you're going to plant them outside so kiddos can take them home and plant them outside, or if they want to do it at your house and plant them outside, or your center and plant them outside. You just want to make sure that you cut a larger hole at the bottom so the roots can grow. They do grow a little bit better if you cut off some of the outside tougher skin, but you want to make sure that if you do try to replant them, that you cut that bottom off as much as possible so those roots can start to grow. This is a nice, kids, being able to have things at their height so that they can kind of work in their little gardens. Doesn't take up a whole lot of space. And so the nice thing about these is they're stackable. And so you can have little ones kind of working at their own height and level, just making sure that if it's draining, that we don't have a little one underneath getting wet. Ice cream cone planters are really fun. They're kid size. They are easy to kind of transport. And the nice thing is they are great. You could just repot them in the dirt. They're biodegradable. Once again, I'd cut a hole in the bottom and I'd punch some holes on the sides just to kind of help with the biodegradable when they take them home. But it's really fun. The kids love this, and it's so easy for them to hold on themselves and transport. So I love this idea, and they really replant well. K-cups. So the thing about K-cups is the plastic is not biodegradable. So if you're using this, if you're just someone who's just starting off with starting seeds, and so you want to start seeds, the K-cups work well. But you do have to take them out. You can't just plant those into the ground because they are not biodegradable. And then you'd want to recycle those. So if you're just kind of starting to get seeds kind of growing, this is one way of doing that. Just making sure that we know that we can't repot, that we can't just plant those directly into the ground. This is really fun, kind of helping kids recognize that the plants are going to grow in the direction that they're pretty much, they can be manipulated to grow. And so the plants are going to grow towards the sun. And so these kind of showing how this plant is growing up towards the light, but they're also, they can move and adjust so that they find the light. So these are really fun kind of science ways of helping kids understand the versatility of a plant and the role of the sun for their growth. So this is another one that they kind of use. You may have to kind of help support that growth a little bit, kind of help manipulate and move it. But it's really fun for the kids to kind of see how that plant will grow. Once again, it doesn't take a lot of space, but it really kind of is a wonderful understanding and concept for them to grasp. Regrowing vegetable scraps. And so these are nice. They don't take up a lot of room. They do work well in that south to southwest exposure. So you want to cut near the base. So things like carrots, parsnips, beets, and pineapple work really well for this. So cut near the base. And then for scallions, you want to cut just near the green line. For a sweet potato, and avocado, you want them suspended in water but not submerged in water, using toothpicks. So if you see that, so their water, you can, avocado, so the seed of the avocado, everybody's like, what do you do with the seed? You can stick some toothpicks in there and put a little bit of water, have it touch the water, and it will grow. Carrot tops. So kind of cut off the top of the carrot. And you want, these are from fresh carrots. Obviously, that's not going to work from our baby carrots because those are just basically washed and already cut. But if you have fresh carrots, these work really well. And then they can start regrowing, and then you can actually plant that into the ground if you want to. So this has cotton balls on the bottom to keep wet. If you want to use any type of, oh golly, what's it called? Paper towels and things like that. You could totally use that. You just want to make sure it stays wet and moist. So you want to just dribble a little bit of water, and then checking, make sure it stays wet throughout. So it will just keep growing, and if you want to just replant it, that works great. Sprouting in a jar is a really fun idea too. Especially for, you can decide what kind of, if you have older kiddos, kind of kids of different ages, having them put this illustration of what it looks like as it starts to grow and how quickly it starts to grow. So that kind of helps them. This is a way that I like to do it too, is if I'm trying to grow different things, sometimes the concept of, what plants grow what size, how fast, because each plant is going to grow a little bit different as far as the rate in which it grows. And so some plants are going to grow really fast, some are going to grow slower. And so this really does kind of help them see, which ones grow faster or slower. What I love about these little jars, is you kind of put a bunch of paper towels that are wet. And so you put the paper towels all around the jar, and then you stuff, once the paper towel's in there, you kind of stuff your seeds kind of all the way around. And then they'll be able to see the roots grow down and the plant grow up. And then they can kind of predict which ones are going to grow faster or slower. And then you can, once again, replant those outside if they want to. So once again, we want to make sure, keep it in a sunny area. It works well if you kind of rotate it so that the sun gets on all sides of the container. And if the seeds are packed tightly, if the paper towels are tight in there, you're more likely to have those seeds kind of be more stable, and growing is going to be a little easier for them. So these are eggshell starters. These are nice because they're inexpensive. We have to remember that salmonella is always on eggs. The risk, I shouldn't say is always on eggs, the risk is always there when we use eggs. So we just want to make sure that we really wash those eggs well. So it's afterwards, because it's when the egg is cracked that there's a potential for salmonella exposure on the outside of that egg. So it's the egg, you want to make sure that we are washing the eggs with soap and water after they've been cracked. So not before, but after. If you want to wash them beforehand, but wash them after they've been cracked. So I would never use these with little kiddos unless we've washed them thoroughly, because we don't want that risk of salmonella. But if we have, they work out well because they're cheap. The eggshell is high in calcium, and so that's good for your soil. It's really easy to plant and transport, and so that's something that works really well. We just want to make sure that we are washing them, because salmonella is a significant concern. I think this is a really cute idea. These work really well with eggs, with little grass seeds too. These are little sprouts that are in there growing, but that's kind of a cute little idea too. Terrariums are also a nice little idea, and terrariums are usually made of a curved glass with a tight fitting lid. Once again, that kind of the, oh golly, greenhouse, sorry, the greenhouse effect. And so what you want to do is a terrarium usually has their base of sand and then gravel to get that moisture, so that the moisture has a place to go, so it's not like root rot. Then you put moss in your soil, and then just different kinds of slow, what you generally want in a terrarium is a slow growing plants. And those are, this is one from our house, little terrarium, terrarium we made. So they like that drier conditions. So they do, they do well. Our cactuses and our succulents are going to do well without that kind of enclosure. So if you're someone who wants to do more succulents, they work really well outside in the drier environment. And so you don't want to overwater them. And so these work really well in small spaces. And so if you look at this, it has the sand at the bottom, and then the rocks, and then the soil, and then the moss. And the moss keeps the moisture on the top, and so it kind of helps that growth. The water, so the plant draws the moisture from the soil and evaporates it through their leaves in a process known as transpiration. The water droplets form and drip down the sides of the container, returning it to the soil, and the process mimics the natural rain cycle. That's what happens when we're in a terrarium, not in a one that this is not going to happen when it's got that outside exposure. Only ones that are going to have an enclosed lid. So this is a really cute little terrarium. The fun thing is kids really do love. There's little things that you can purchase, make a little village. You can make your own little terrarium center, like your own home center or center that the kids are. You can put little people in there. So it really is kind of fun for kids to produce and make. These are really simple ideas, kind of, and this is more of an elaborate. So I think this one is super cute with little mushrooms. So if you're going to have one, you want to mist your plants and soil lightly. And so place your away from direct sunlight. They generally don't like the direct sunlight. If your open container plants are wilting or turning brown, you may have underwatered them, and prune away any damaged material and thoroughly mist the soil and plant leaves. So it's the thing about with geraniums and these succulents is you want to just mist them. We don't need a lot of water. They're very sensitive to water. So that misting is really kind of fun for the kiddos. We just want to make sure they don't over mist them, but that's kind of a fun thing for them to do, and helps them understand why some plants need more water and these ones do not need as much water. If a closed container becomes completely foggy, you probably overwatered it, and you just want to remove the lid, wipe the inside of the glass dry with cotton swabs or a small small sponge paintbrush, and then air it out before replacing the lid, just to get some of that moisture out. I think this is fun too. We talked about worms last week. Kids, obviously, they love worms, but you can make a little earthworm motel. And so using a 2-liter bottle, what you want to do when you do this is you want to use different colors of sand and soil, because the sand and the soil, they'll be able to see those move and the changes in the sand and the soil as the earthworms move throughout the little kind of earthworm motel. And so with this, it really works well if you kind of rotate the colors of the sand and the dirt, and then put several earthworms in there so that they can try to see how the land, the dirt and the sand mix up and change, and kind of the role of the earthworm. So thinking about, another poll, what are ideas that you are likely to try in your center? Just give another 10 or 15 seconds, get the last couple people to vote. It doesn't look like everybody voted yet, but I'm just going to launch this poll. Looks like everybody would be willing to try some of these ideas. Awesome. All right, I got another poll for you. And what ideas are you likely to try? And I didn't put another one for other place, so there's one other one. Okay, another just couple seconds before I have to launch it before everybody gets a chance to vote. All right, looks like a lot of people like the silly heads with hair. Those are really fun. Great little gift. Seed bags, I love the seed bags. It's really fun for them to see that growth up, and then the roots, I love that. The garden, the glove, I love all of them, to be honest with you. So awesome. I'm excited that you guys are hopefully got some ideas that are easy and doable. Other things to think about are, graphs, helping, kids with those science concepts, of graphing, of predicting, asking kids their favorite colors, flowers, vegetables, asking them to help list what kind of materials are maybe needed and why, drawing, labels, so that they can identify what they're growing, that measuring, distance between seeds, how deep it needs to be buried, how far apart they need to be put. So those are all awesome, kind of science concepts for you to help with your kiddos. So I appreciate all of you joining tonight, and hopefully you got some things that you can take back to your centers and use with your kids. I will launch a survey as soon as I end the webinar. A survey will pop up. It is required that you complete this survey. Once I can verify your attendance and your participation with the polls, then in the completion of the survey, I will send out a certificate within 48 hours. If you don't receive it, I would look in your spam or your junk mail. If you haven't received emails from me before, they might go directly to your spam or your junk mail. I appreciate all of you joining in with me. I hope everyone has a great evening, and we will see you again soon. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.